Welcome to Capital Baptist Church and welcome to Winning Balance at Home. Winning Balance at Home. This is part of a series we're doing called Winning at Home. And the premise of this series is that homes aren't just built, they have to be won. Homes aren't just built, and what I just mean by that is just not going to just happen, okay? If you want a winning home, you're going to have to win it. You're going to have to fight for it. It's going to be a battle. And honestly, today's topic is at the very center of the fight and of the battle, and that is finding balance. Finding balance. This is something I think I struggle with, and I think a lot of people struggle with in life. And for me, I can tell you it's a constant fight. It's a constant battle to find balance in life. All of us are busy, and all of us have a lot going on. And so listen, we got to learn how to win when it comes to balance. And so today I'm excited about sharing this with you. And as we begin, I want to read Ecclesiastes chapter 2, 17 through 24. And when I read this is the story here of Solomon, and he's talking about a life where, what I think he's really communicating is, I don't have balance in my life, and I don't have a proper perspective on my life, and he comes to the conclusion that all this comes from God, that God is the source. And so let's read the words of Solomon in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, 17 through 24. Listen to this. Now think about this as a story or a testimony. He's telling about his life. He says, "Therefore I hated life. I hated life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me. For all is vanity and grasping for the wind." He's saying, my life, I tell you, he literally says, I hate life. I hate life. And he says, I'm doing all this work and it's stressing me out and it feels so empty, and it's like I'm grasping for the wind. What a powerful word picture there. "Then I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will rule over all my labor in which I toiled and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This also," he says, "is vanity. Therefore I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For there's a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, yet he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This also," he says, "is vanity and a great evil. For what has man for all his labor and for the striving of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun? For all the days of his life are sorrowful, and his work burdensome. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. This also is vanity." So this is just viewing life really in a sense apart from God. I mean, he's just saying, I'm going through life and I'm doing all this stuff and I'm going here and I'm going there and I'm all stressed out. And really, to me, what that says is, I'm out of balance. I'm out of balance in my perspective. I'm out of balance in my life and what I'm doing with my life. But notice verse 24. "Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God." And listen, that is where we need to be living our lives. Having a perspective of God, and having a perspective that we are living our lives to honor God. And it's through God we can enjoy the good in our labor. We can live a busy life doing a lot of stuff, but listen, God is the one that can help us to find the balance that we need to live a life of decreased stress, but listen, also increased success in life. Well, honestly, easier said than done. But today I want us to look at God's Word and see what God says to us about living a life of balance. And so let's talk about how. How to win balance at home. How to win balance at home. Now, today we have another skill, and if you've been tracking with this series, the basis of this series is 6 skills that need to be developed in your home if you're going to win at home. And today we're going to look at skill number 5. Skill number 5. And here it is. Developing a balance that fulfills God's will and meets needs. Developing a balance that fulfills God's will and meets needs. Now, I want to point out to you, and for you all that have been watching, once again, I want to point out to you the word developing. Every skill starts with that word developing, and it's important to know why. What I'm trying to say to you is none of us are perfect, okay? None of us have arrived at mastering 100% these skills. We're all a work in progress, and you might be struggling with balance. I struggle with balance sometimes. The idea here is you got to keep fighting, okay? You got to keep battling. You got to keep developing, keep working at it. Don't give up. And so the skill is developing a balance that fulfills, number one, God's will. Okay, and one of the most important things I'm going to say today is God's will is unique to every home. So you got to do God's will in your home and meet needs. Okay, so you want to fulfill God's will, but along with that, you want to meet the needs that are part of your life. So every home is unique, and you got to do God's will, and you got to meet the needs of your home. So again, our key verse for today, let me read it one more time, Ecclesiastes 2:24. Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. Wow. Well, today as we talk about this, really what we're talking about is time management. Okay, that's really what this is all about. Balancing your home is balancing your time. And as we look today, I'm going to give you what I'm calling 7 balancers, 7 things that can help you balance your time in your life. But as we begin, let me just share with you 3 quick foundational things about time. First of all, time is the great equalizer. And what I mean by that is it doesn't matter who you are, okay? Everybody has the same amount of time. I mean, that's very different than money, right? I mean, every person has a different amount of money, right? Everybody. Nobody has the exact same amount of money, okay? But we all have the same amount of time, 168 hours in every week. And it doesn't matter whether you're this or that or who. It doesn't matter who, okay? It doesn't matter if you're, the wealthiest person in the world or the poorest person in the world. You got 168 hours. Number 2, time is our greatest resource. And what I mean by that is time is the most valuable resource you have in your life. And a lot of times we would think, no, money is my most important resource. No. And the reason I say that, if you waste some money, if I waste $100, I mean, that's not good, okay, to waste $100. That's a lot of money, but I can earn that again, okay? I can get another 100. But if you waste your time, you can never gain it back. And then the third thing is time is stewardship. And what I mean by that is we are stewards of what God gives us. And we all have a specific amount of time with our lives. We don't know how long we're going to be on this earth, okay? We don't know, right? We don't know. But whatever time God allots to us to live on this earth, we are to manage it to honor Him, all right? So those are 3 really important foundational concepts. And you really got to see what we're talking about today through those lenses, okay, those 3 different foundational concepts. All right, so with that said, let's talk about 7 balancers, 7 things that can help you balance your home. The first one is, and I'd ask you to note this, or if you got the notes in front of you, put a star beside it. Balance your home with worship. balance your home with worship. Worship is the foundation of our lives. I mean, we were made to worship God. We were made to worship God. And listen, when it comes to worship and balance, you got to understand this. Find strength through worship. Find strength through worship. So you're struggling to try to get it all done, right? And that requires energy, right? That requires strength. And what we have to understand is God, through worship, can give us supernatural strength to get it done. Isaiah 40:31, a beautiful passage, says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." God says, wait on me. And what that means is depend on me. Lean into me. All right? You know, don't try to run through life without me. Wait on me. Worship me. And God says, I will renew your strength. Are you tired today? Are you weary today and struggling with balance? I get it. I understand. I feel that way sometimes myself. But listen, God can give you the strength. But listen, you got to worship Him. And so when it comes to balance with worship, be consistent with what I call daily worship and weekly worship. Now, obviously, our lives are to be lived as worship to God. I get that. Worship is really 24/7, okay? Because that's what we're to do. We're to live our lives to honor Him all the time, all right? But there's two specific areas I want to focus on. And the first one is daily worship. The second is weekly worship. Now, what I mean by daily worship is what I call private worship, or what I call a quiet time. So maybe that's a new term to you because you're new to church. It's kind of a churchy word, private time. So a private time is where you take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour, whatever, okay, and you totally get quiet before God, and you do two things, okay? You pray and you read the Bible, okay? You read God's Word and you pray. And it's interesting to note in Luke 10:41-42, when Jesus was talking about a woman named Mary, and her sister Martha was actually complaining about her sitting at the feet of Jesus, having a quiet time with Jesus. That here's what Jesus said. Jesus answered and said to her, "Martha, Martha, you're worried and troubled about many things." Does that describe you today? "But one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part, which will not be taken away from her." But one thing is needful, and Mary has chosen that good part. Listen, which will not be taken away from her. Was Jesus saying Martha and all her serving was not important? No. This is an issue of time and priority. Jesus is in the house, so to speak. And Mary is choosing to worship Him. Mary is choosing to sit, okay, and have a quiet time with Jesus. It's an issue of priority. It's an issue of taking time to worship the Lord. Listen, take time as best you can every day, maybe 5 minutes. I think it's amazing what 5 minutes can do, but of course, a little longer or much longer would be even better, okay? But spend that time with the Lord. And then public worship, or, we're talking here about weekly worship. And what I mean by weekly worship is public worship, or very simply, come to church, okay? Come to church. See, God designed the rhythm by which we would live, that the first thing we would do on the first day of the week was go to church. The Bible says in Hebrews 10:25, "Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching." God says when the church gathers, and the definition of the church is a called out assembly of baptized believers. That's the definition of a church, okay? The assembly. And God is saying here, don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together. And so in the rhythms of life, God designed it, okay, that you would start your week out. Sunday's the first day of the week. I know in our minds we think Monday. I get that. But Sunday's really your first day of the week, that you get yourself in tune with God by going to church and public worship. And again, from a practical standpoint, this is where you find God's strength. You wait. You don't just rush through life. Don't take time for private worship or quiet time. You rush through life and you skip church to try to get something else done. No, that's not God's plan. Get strength from God through worship. Please, again, I put a star by that. Number 2, balance your home with seasons. So you got to understand that you're going to live out seasons in your life. Not every period of your life is going to be the same. And balance is going to look different at different times. So I want to point out 2 things about this. Number 1, realize the season of speed in which we live. So balance today is very different than balance 20 years ago, 30 years ago, certainly 50 years ago. Now, I'm not saying they had less to do, okay, or they don't. It's just different, okay? It's different. People back then were just as busy. They had a hard life. I mean, they had to do a lot more effort for the basic necessities of life, things that we just kind of take for granted in our lives. But what we do have to understand is the speed of life is different. And it's causing us to have a different and a bigger kind of challenge when it comes to our lives. And Daniel 12:4 gives us some insight. It says, "But you, Daniel, shut up the words and sealed the book until the time of the end." And listen to this. "Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. You see, in the end times, we call it the signs of the times. We don't know exactly when the rapture will happen. And the world as we know it right now will come to an end. But we do know what the world will be like. And one word that describes that is speed. We're going to be running to and fro. Why? Because knowledge shall be increased. In other words, this explosion of knowledge, which has come through technology, is going to, yes, they're going to save us time, right? But at the same time, it's going to speed up our lives, right? And so we're on the run, we're on the go. And we have all these things around us, and it's different. One thing that's different is because of technology, most of us can't ever escape our work, okay? I mean, I work anywhere and everywhere because of technology. That's the nature of my job. Maybe your job's different, okay? But I can do my job, parts of my job, anytime, anywhere, any place, and I do, okay? I do. And quite frankly, you have to put forth a ton of effort to take so-called a break, okay, because of that. And most of us live that. A second thing is realize the season in which you live. So all of us have different seasons. I'll give you an example here. Some of us live a season of being single, and some of us live in a season of being married. And the Bible talks about these seasons as being different, okay? And I just thought this would be an interesting example. Do you know in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verse 5, that as part of God's plan was that if a person was a man of war, okay, that he was to take 1 year to stay at home. Let me read it, Deuteronomy 24:5. "When a man has taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war or be charged with any business. He shall be free at home 1 year and bring happiness to his wife whom he has taken." God said, okay, when somebody gets married and they're a soldier, they're a warrior, rather than going out and fighting in the field for 1 year, they need to focus on their wife, their new wife. God said, okay, this is a different season here. Another example in the New Testament, Paul talks about being single. And he was single. He was a single man. I mean, when you think about it, Jesus and Paul both were single. All right, there's single. One is a whole number. Okay, please understand that. All right, but it goes on to say Paul is talking about in 1 Corinthians 7 some of the benefits, if you will, of being single. And he says, "But I want you to be without care. He who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he who is married cares about the things of the world, how he may please his wife." Now, it doesn't mean that married people are busier than single people, because that's certainly not true, okay? I would never make that argument. But what he's saying is when you're single, it's you, okay? You can pretty much kind of go where the God leads you pretty easy, right? But when you get married, you got to think about, okay, before you make pretty much any big decision, well, I got to include my spouse in this, I can't just go roam and do whatever I want to do. I got a wife. My wife's name is Debbie. I got a responsibility to please Debbie. Okay, to be a good husband. All right. In other words, that's different, right? A season of singleness and a season of marriage are different. I'll give you another example. Okay, so my brother and I decided under God's leadership that we were going to do our best to care for our parents as long as we could in our homes and not put them into a care place or whatever, a home. Not that we think there's anything wrong with that, but we just wanted to do whatever we could as long as we could. We ended up having to put them in a place, put them in a home. We could no longer care for them. But there was a period of a few years there where they were pretty much able to function and do things. They just, they needed help with their medicine, paying their bills, some basic care. And we were both able to do our jobs, if you will, with our spouses, partnering together. And we for about 5 or 6 years, we traded every 2 weeks, okay? That was a season in our lives. And I had to make some adjustments to do that. There were some things that I did before. I kind of put them aside for that period of time. Now they're in heaven. They've passed. And I'm in a different season, okay? I'm not thinking about today, okay, I need to go see mom and dad, okay? They're 2 hours away, or I need to meet my brother and we're going to trade off or whatever. Or I'm not sitting here today wondering, are mom and dad okay? No, that season's over, okay? But balance then and balance now are not the same. You got to understand there's certain seasons. Number 3, balance your home with God's will. Your purpose in life is to accomplish God's unique will for your home. God's will for your life and my life are not the same. And so I've got to balance out my life to do what God has called me to do. And I love the testimony about David, Acts 13:36. For David, after he had served his own generation by the will of God, fell asleep. Boy, that's about as good as you want to put something on a tombstone, that's about as good as it gets, okay? David, after he had served his own generation by the will of God, fell asleep. That means he died, he passed away, okay? Bible uses sleep as a metaphor of death. And so he served his generation by the will of God. And you're going to serve your generation and your home by the will of God. And so you need to realize with that, you have enough time to do God's will. Please hear me. If you can't get something done, all right, I want you to track with me now. In my mind, there's 2 possibilities. One, you're not supposed to get it done. It's not God's will for you to get done. Or number 2, you need to look at your methods or the way you're doing things, and maybe there's a more efficient method you could use to get it done, all right? The point is, you have enough time to do God's will. Now, don't say you can't get it all done. God wants me to get it all done, but I don't have time to do it. No, that's absolutely not true, okay? And you got to realize you have enough time to do God's will. And Ephesians 5:16-17 simply tells us to use our time to do God's will. So balance your home with God's will. What is God's will? Get it done. Number 4, balance your home with work/school and ministry. So some of us here are working, some of us are students, and some of us are both, okay? And then on top of that, ministry. So listen, working hard does not compete with your family, but shows commitment to your family. Let me say that again. I kind of stuttered a little bit there. Working hard does not compete with your family, but shows commitment to your family. So first of all, God's economy requires work, all right? God simply says, 2 Thessalonians 3:10, "For even when we were with you, we commanded you, if anyone will not work, neither shall he eat." So that's God's command there. If a person is going to eat, they have to work. That's the fact. And every member of the family needs to understand that, okay? Because this is the way God operates. And then listen to 1 Timothy 5:8. "But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." Wow. God says, you don't take care of your home, you're worse than an unbeliever. And so what I'm saying to you is, please, a lot of us get this idea that my work and things is competing with my family. Your family needs to understand, okay? I would be specific, your kids need to understand that we have to work to provide. It's not competition, it's being a good member of the home, okay? For example, I grew up, my dad was a blue-collar worker, and he worked second shift at a foundry, all right? And second shift meant when I was pretty much getting out of school, he was going to work. And so Dad worked very, very hard, and he worked a lot of overtime too. And because of that, I mean, the truth is I didn't see my dad a whole lot, okay, particularly during the week or whatever. Because I'd be coming home from school and he'd be off to work, and then I have memories of going to pick him up like at 11 o'clock at night, and my dad worked at a foundry. It was a filthy job, and sometimes I guess he would shower there at the job, but a lot of times he wouldn't shower. Okay, he'd shower at home, and he'd get in the car and he'd be all sweaty and black soot and stuff all over his body and clothes and everything else. Okay. I had to understand as a child that my dad, loved me, and he was out working, okay, to provide for our home, okay? And he wasn't a bad father for doing that. He was a good father. That was the job he could do to provide income for our family. And I had to understand that as a child. And sometimes our kids have to understand that as well. My dad made time for me, and we spent time together, but the nature of his job required him to do things like that. And so I just want to tell you something. It's not a competition between your work and your home. If you go out and work to provide for your home, that's a noble thing you're doing. And then I'll also add, give back using your spiritual gifts for ministry. Best you can, you also need to use your spiritual gifts in ministry and serve, with them in the church and in the community. So balance your home with work and school and ministry. And then number 5, balance your home with relationships. So you got to think about your home being made up of different relationships. So if you are married, that's one thing. If you have kids, that's another thing, okay? If your parents are alive, that's another thing. So just very quickly, let me walk through these. Schedule time with your spouse. Now, don't combine your spouse and your kids into one. You need to see it as 2 sets of relationships. That I'm a husband, or maybe your wife or whatever, and I'm a parent, okay? I'm 2, I'm not 1. So I have a responsibility to my wife. And the Bible says, Ecclesiastes 9:9a, live joyfully with the wife whom you love. And so, very quickly, you got to understand the marital relationship is the one that will last until death, okay? And yes, you're a parent all of your life too, but it's different because eventually your kids move out on their own, where like my wife and I are empty nesters right now. But we're together under the same roof, and our kids have gone out. Now they have families and such. And I need to realize, hey, this relationship here, I need to take care of it, okay? And so that means putting a priority on your spouse. Don't give yourself totally to your kids, and then one day wake up and the kids are gone, and you look at your spouse and say, well, who are you, okay? And you hear about these divorces that happen, and people have been married 25, 30, 35 years. A lot of times, that's because they didn't invest in their marriage. Also, schedule time with your children. Spend time with your kids, and be present when you're with them. Okay, this is hard, right? At least it is for me. All right, just be present when you're with your children. Okay, just do your best to, when I'm with my family, I do my best to put my cell phone in cell phone prison, I call it. Okay. And just for that precious time, that hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it might be, I'm going to give myself, I'm going to lean in to my children, okay? Deuteronomy 6, 5 through 7 talks about, teaching your children when you sit in your house. So what does that mean? You got to sit in your house, okay? God's saying spend some time in your home, all right? And then I'll add schedule time with your parents. So my parents have now passed, but my wife's mom is still alive. And so what that means is there's times, and it's been kind of different because before I had my parents and she had her mom, her dad passed away. He actually lived with us for a lot of years, but he did pass. But that meant we had to spend time. Sometimes we would both go see her mom. Sometimes we both see her, my parents. My parents have now passed, but we still have her mom. And that means there are times when Debbie doesn't spend time at the house. She goes to see her mom, and that's good. The Bible says honor your father and your mother. And then number 6, balance your home with self-care. Yes, you're on the list, okay? Yes, you're on. And again, you say, this is like, wow. Well, maybe this is giving you some insight on why balance is so hard, okay? When you think about all we have to do, all right? But you're on the list. Self-care is on the list. And I simply say, follow the example of Jesus. Mark 6:31. Listen, this is Jesus. And he said to them, capital H on the he, that means Jesus because he was God, it's capitalized. The H is capitalized. He, Jesus, God, said to them, come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while. For there were many coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. This is Jesus, ladies and gentlemen. Jesus told his disciples, we're going so hard, we haven't even had time to eat anything. He says, nutrition is important, right? Take time to eat. Take time to take care of yourself. And he says, let's go rest some. Let's go rest a while. Let's come aside. I like to say, if you don't come aside, you come apart. You will come apart. If you don't come aside, you will come apart, right? And so self-care includes, taking care of your health, rest, nutrition, exercise, all those things. And so make sure self-care, let's be honest, okay? If I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of my wife. I can't take care of my children. I can't take care of my grandchildren. I can't take care of our church, I have to take care of me, okay, to be able to take care of all these other things, all right? And if you're like me, a lot of times I put myself last, in fact, sometimes very last. But I have to remember the example of Jesus. And here's the deal. Jesus didn't stop because it all got done. This is what you got to understand. Let's be real. There were people there that still need to get saved. There were people there that still probably need to be healed and cared for. And he didn't say, okay, guys, we're all done. Now we can stop. No, he says, listen, we now is a time where we've got to take care of ourselves, okay? He's saying we got to balance our lives. And then lastly, as we close, balance your home with time management. So we started out talking about time, and I want to end with time because really that's what it comes down to. And so balance your time with time management means, number one, create a system to order your home. So the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 14:40, let all things be done decently and in order. Order. So you got to be very stringent in getting order to your life, all right? And the way I do that, I call them big rocks. And so I try to think about what are my big rocks for the day, and for the week, for the month, for the year. And then I block those times out. Okay, like my big rock right now is to record this sermon. It doesn't mean I don't have anything else to do. Okay, I do. But this is you're my big rock. Okay, this is my big rock right now, okay? And it's on my schedule, okay? Record the online sermon, okay? Get it done, all right? Get it done. I pushed everything else aside. I says, now's the time to do this. And you have to think about what are my big rocks so you don't get other things knocking out your highest priorities. And that leads to harmonize your schedule to make each day count. So then you got to blend all this stuff together, all these, and it's hard, okay? In fact, a prayer I pray oftentimes is, God, what do you want me to do next with my time? That's a prayer I pray multiple times a day. God, what do you want me to do next with my time? You got to harmonize your schedule to make each day count. And I close with Psalm 90, verse 12. So teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And what that says is leverage each day for eternal impact. Leverage each day for eternal impact. Well, listen, it's a lot, okay? It's a lot. It's a fight. It's a battle. It's a development, okay? Listen, you got to keep working at this, all right? Keep working at this. Because, listen, balance is important if you're going to win at home.